Hey, new idea for a game here. All right, check it out. Cool, 3D, bullet hell, roguelike, RPG. It's pretty much all the things I want the game to be. We'll work on the name later, right? I thought I'd just go through and show some of the games that I want to draw inspiration from when making this, and some of the aspects that I'd like to draw from, right? First of all, Realm of the Mad God. It's a bullet hell game with I like progression, like you can get permanent character stats and you can store items. So that kind of permadeath where it's not pure, I guess. And so yeah, I want to take that sort of semi permadeath aspect, permadeath with progression, right? Classes, that's pretty important with the permadeath. Combine those two, and it's a very good combo. You're like, yes, right, we're good here. Um, and it just increases the replayability, which I like and I value quite a bit. And then I want to draw the experience of fighting event bosses, right? So these guys are like very hard enemies, and they just exist in the world. And so I want to draw the experience of going up and fighting one of these guys, where they have a bunch of minions surrounding them with their own bullet patterns, and then the boss themselves has a daunting bullet pattern, and so that's what I want to capture in 3D though, in 3D, hence the name, right? Trove, it's a MMO 3D third person loot obtaining game, I guess. From Trove, I want to take the dungeons. So the way they're just scattered throughout the world, I like that. And I want to build on it by making them less like visible, I guess. So making them so they're more hidden, and so that your gameplay of fighting enemies will be punctuated by having to search for a new dungeon. So they'll be in hard to reach places maybe, or even actually hidden, and you'll have to use maybe an item to find them. And I don't want them to be simple though. Like Trove's dungeons, you pretty much run through them and you're done, and you're at the boss, right? And you kill him really quick. I want the dungeon to be more of an experience, right? Where it's like you have stage 1, stage 2, boss, and then you go in that order, and or maybe more. Maybe there's things in between or side paths or something, but I want it to be very I want you to be able to rush them still, but I want it to be much harder. So the enemies are actually challenging, even if you're a good player, right? Or even if you have good items. I want it to still have I want to have an improved experience in that regard. In terms of the worlds, I want to take sort of maybe not the voxel world specifically, I guess, but that sort of aesthetic, I guess, the way where it feels, the mood of the world, like scenery, things like this. And then the skills. So in Trove, you have things like gardening or rune crafting, right? Which are skills where you start at level 1, and then by doing the skill, you upgrade your proficiency with it and get to do better things. So when you're at the max level of gardening, you can make better plants. And so I'm hoping to take this in the form of something like maybe a potion skill, right? So you would be able to level up your potion making. And then make better potions that give you more power or health, regeneration, things like this. And it would be sort of a side, not a mini game, but a side element of the game to also punctuate the experience of going from dungeon to dungeon. The skills would be sort of in between that. And so you go dungeon skill, look for a dungeon in the world, and you go in between these states. So it would be sort of the loop there, right? And the skills would also be things like you would do in the world. So you could have something like mining or fishing, and those would give certain benefits at a high level maybe. And I want to have a lot of those, not like a few. I want to have like a bunch. So it would be every gardening and fishing and mining and potions, weapon crafting, magical weapon making, things like this. Next, Furi. It's just a pure bullet hell, really hard bullet hell game. Like no progression, is just focused on the combat. I want to take their bullet hellness in the way that each of the bosses, right? They have different phases, right? And they have these bullet patterns which are really complex and tough to go up against. And there's only usually like one spot. They have a bullet pattern that goes out like this, right? And you have bullets everywhere, and there's this one spot. That's where you need to stand. That's like the good location, and everywhere else they're shooting bullets. Here's the boss, right? And they're shooting in all their, and so that's what I kind of want to emulate in 3D, of course. Yeah, so it would not only, it would be, well, yeah, another dimension, right? So you could jump around bullets, and so that would add a whole nother dimension, I guess, so to speak, to the complexity of the combat, yeah? And so, yeah, that's sort of the element I want to take from that. And then also, similarly, sort of, is the, I guess, interaction between melee ranged, right? In how, you shoot ranged for a little while, and then you knock down a health bar, and then you go to the melee mode, and then you slice them up. But there's also a different element of the bullet hellness and like quick time events to that. And then you go back to the range. So that's what I'm kind of hoping to have. Maybe not within the same character, but maybe, different characters. Like we have some melee characters, some ranged characters, some in between, some that use both. And then, magic that plays into that as well. And so here's my thoughts for my game, my sort of core, right? 3D bullet hell, that's non-negotiable. That's the core of the game. If there is none of this other stuff, this is the only thing we have. So naturally, it's a very high priority for me, right? Yeah, so 3D bullet hell, it's in the name, right? 3D bullet hell. Yeah, whatever. Yes, I want loot, so enemies that drop loot. And bosses, right? And enemies. All these guys will drop like items and equipment. And maybe like craftable items. I don't know. I'm still considering it. But anyway, gameplay loop is generally going to feel like, okay, you fight bosses to get loot to fight harder bosses. So the better loot will allow you into the harder areas, or allow you to survive in the harder areas. And same thing with items. And these tie back actually into the skills. And so once you level up a skill high enough, you'll be able to make better items. And so these can be, again, things like health potions, or even like magical items. So like, a staff, magic staff that's super powerful but has limited uses. That could be made with a skill, with the items that were collected from another skill. So this is another huge aspect that I hope to implement. And while it's not necessary, I think it would add a huge level of depth, and it would be good punctuation to the constant bullet hell combat. And then I think dungeons are another important thing. I just want these for the basic gameplay. I want to have the experience of, running through the world, and you look and you're like, oh, and you see a little ear peeking out from the hill of a piece of, the castle or whatever, right? And you go and find the dungeon that way. So it's going to be not very hard to find, but not obvious. And certainly there no like trackers or anything. It'll just be, look for the dungeon. And that's part of the experience as well, is looking for and traversing the terrain like that, right? So anyway, that's my idea. We'll see where it goes later.